Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and of course the things you didn't know in Elden Ring series. Today we have some follow-ups from previous episodes, some interesting things that have occurred outside of the game itself, and some exciting details to come. As always, thank you to you guys in the comments that get involved and help this series continue to exist. But without any further ado, let's begin. Speaking of which, for our first thing, it is a follow-up from the previous episode where we talked about Godwyn and his fishy form behind me. And one popular theory that I discussed, which is really cool, is that he's actually turning into a giant basilisk. All around the world we can find basilisks. They spread the same sort of death blight that he does. They have the same eyes that he has, these dead sort of eclipse eyes, and they're also actually kind of scaly and fishy in the way that Godwyn's giant body is. It's a cool theory, but Shadow Cypher Demon in the comments, was actually the top comment, talked about the Mimic's Veil. This is that item that turns you into different objects based on where you are and the context of that. And apparently when I use this, something very interesting happens. Alright, that's not exactly what I was expecting. Let's try again. And there we go. I am now the corpse of a basilisk, and interestingly, I'm a corpse, you know, just like Godwyn's body over there. This is a body as well. So yes, contextually, if you use the Mimic's Veil, you turn into something that is suitable to the area, turning into a basilisk right in front of Godwyn. It's quite interesting, and I really like the way that it kind of lines up with the theory. However, it could be that this area just has basilisks in it, and this is just one of the options, but I don't know, it feels like a bit of a coincidence to me. You can kind of look at the tail from here and get a comparison, and it is very fishy and similar shape, but the end is not quite as, well, a fin that allows for swimming compared to the basilisk sort of ending tip there. However, there's more to say about this whole theory of whether Godwyn's turning into a basilisk or something else. There's a very popular theory to do with Japanese sort of old myth or folklore that is that all to do with turning into a mermaid and corruption to do with that. It's a good theory and I do like it, but ultimately this basilisk theory, this folklore mermaid thing, they're just theories, they're not proven. And someone called Umbrian Messiah even said in the comments last time that there's a counter to both theories, that maybe he's not turning into a basilisk, but he's being turned into the thing that he's being turned into by the tree itself. And maybe the basilisks, like the ones in this area, are just consuming the roots and being transformed into these creatures. The source of it all is just the tree. It's all very interesting. I found it very cool to see this sort of back and forth in the comments, so a huge thank you for that. This next one is an interesting one, and it's come up in the comments a couple times from D34D Struck. Apparently, this incantation, Greyolls Roar, big AoE dragon roar, very powerful, very good incantation, can be used to basically put out the fire of certain enemy weapons and nullify their effect or completely stop them. That's a really cool concept, but I've never seen that before. A great example of an enemy that could have this done to them would be the mad pumpkin heads of the world, who do use fire or flaming weapons. D34D Struck said that there is a ruins, the Caelum ruins here, that has the duo boss fight with the pumpkins, and one of them does in fact have a flaming weapon. So to test it here. And here we go. We have a guy with a flaming sort of club, and we have a flaming, well, flail. See if I can even get the incantation off. There we go. Yes, well, that's fascinating. It put both of their weapons out. They're no longer fire weapons. Wow, and this one's flail is literally passing through me. It's dealing no damage. It's completely just useless. Obviously, he can still hit me with his head like many pumpkin heads will do. Or he could punch me, but his flail is not dealing damage anymore. It's like it's coded to only deal fire damage. Oh my god, the other one's staff. It's like club. That's just passing through me as well. Their weapons are basically 100% fire damage, and I've just nullified the fire damage. That's really cool. Thanks for letting me know about that. No idea how I would have ever found that. This is clearly not intended, right? Their weapons should still do physical damage. But what are the chances they're ever going to find this out and fix it? What a cool detail, though. Thank you. Next, we have a really useful one that I've only just recently learned about, and that is a talisman that extends the effect of even incantations or spells in an unexpected way. Take the Black Flame Blade buff here. This quick buff is really cool. It enhances my weapon with a black flame, and then when I'm dealing damage with it or using Ashes of War, even ranged, I'll deal damage over time based on the percent of the enemy's health. So bigger health, better damage. But as you can see, the effect lasts a very short amount of time. Now you do get to cast it really quick, and if you do like say different attacks and then chain into it, it's even faster, which is cool. But ultimately the buff lasts a really small amount of time, so you have to keep turning it on, putting it on over and over. Take, say, the Blood Flame Blade buff as a comparison. That lasts a lot longer, a lot easier to use. What if there's a way to extend how long that buff actually lasts? Well, there is. The Old Lord's Talisman here. If you have this equipped while using buffs of that nature, it'll extend the effect of these spells by 30%. So not quite half the length, but almost, and that's a notable increase on something as short as the Black Flame Blade buff. But it will also work on the others, like Blood Flame buff, which is still very nice to have. But did you know that it also extends to Ashes of War buffs as well, such as an obvious one, the Rallying Standard here, which is going to give me a bunch of benefits when I use it, as you can see, and that is going to last 30% longer, which is awesome. There's quite a few buffs in this game, not just incantations and spells, obviously from various Ashes of War. There's even Golden Vow Ashes of War, and you can improve how long they last by 30% with one quick talisman. So if you're like me and you didn't know that, that could be beneficial to your build. Next up, a couple of really interesting tips to do with Tauren and the control of him. Now, you may have experienced, like when you're sprinting, you're in combat, and you're trying to deal with an enemy, and you wanted to turn around, and then Tauren just refuses to actually make a tight turn, such as this one. That's when you're sprinting, and in a tough spot like this, you could fall off the side of a bridge or a ledge, and that has killed plenty of players, including me at times. But there are a few ways you can control Tauren. Now, this comes to mind because of someone in the comments of a previous episode. SV Stoned SVS is back with this tip. Now, when you try to do a 180, there is this awkward movement, right? So as you can see, I've done a 180, I've done a 180, and so on. I'm moving around quite a lot. I'm not staying in one place. If we're on a tight ledge or a tough spot, that could be enough to send us over the edge, and that could be bad. SV Stone's tip is to actually move slowly in a direction of any kind, and then just turn around. The idea is that you will move a lot less when you're already like actively moving, as you can see, compared to just doing a complete flick, and then just sort of walking off the edge accidentally. Like you can see, this movement's just so janky. But this comment got me thinking about other ways to control Tauren. Now, when you're sprinting, you have much less control over Tauren when you're turning, and that's obviously very deadly. But did you know you can do a complete 180 at any time off a double jump? In fact, you can do any directional. So let me give you an example. I'm going to sprint down this bridge and try to turn, and it's just not going to happen. So instead of trying to turn all the way around, I'm just going to jump and double jump, and then I can go in any direction. For example, I could just 180 like that, and there's no issue. So using double jump in these scenarios is probably the best way to deal with it. However, something I didn't know until very recently, hilariously, is when you're full sprinting, you can do the flick in the complete opposite direction and do a complete stop and 180, which will immediately bring you to the stop position, allowing you to make these turns. Or if you're in the middle of a fight and maybe that's just not an option, you can then just slowly turn around like so. So to recap, you can flip 180 from standstill, but that moves you a lot. By moving slowly, you can make these smaller turns, which is more accurate and safer. From any speed, any distance, you can double jump and then do a full 360 in any direction. So that's generally what I do when I'm going to mess up and throw myself off a ledge. And even mid full sprint, you can do the 180 flick and come to a complete standstill and control Tauren once again. It's something I see newer players make the mistake of most when they're targeting, maybe on horse combat, and then they're just trying to turn around, but the full sprint, and they just can't keep control. Next up, we stand before the Mimic tier boss fight, which, as you might know, will reflect whatever you are wearing, whatever you're doing as you go into it. So the most common advice you can do is to just take off your equipment and then step into the boss fight, and you'll be fighting a naked foe who's just trying to throw fists at you and not really do any damage. But you might not realize that you can go a little bit further. There are, of course, talismans that increase the damage taken, such as the Radagon Scar Seals, the Marika Scar Seals, the various Scorpion Charms, or the Crucible Charms, that ultimately mean you're even weaker when you step into this. And as long as you don't have like a seal or a staff, they also can't use any of the magic you might have equipped as well. And there you go. It's a naked me trying to throw fists. Now, if I actually let it hit me, it does almost no damage anyway. But it does make me wonder whether this boss fight was ever intended to be in the game. Originally, there was this whole storyline that's been cut to do with an NPC who was literally a silver tier that escaped the Eternal City. You take it through the world and you perform certain tasks while it's sort of inside of you as a sort of parasite, and then it ends up getting its own flesh, a complete copy of you, and goes on to do its own things, and then you have a boss fight with that. That was completely cut from the game, and instead we have this kind of interesting copy fight, which is neat, but nowhere near as in depth as what could have been that questline. I do wonder if we'll ever see any more of that storyline, maybe in DLC, but I'm not convinced unless the DLC has something to do with Nokron, which I'm not really sure it will. Having said that, we are currently in the Nokron area, right? And from here, you can see Mohgwyn's dynasty, and Miquella is literally right over there in the cocoon. The main theory is that the DLC will be tied to Miquella and the dream world, and we will enter it through Miquella's cocoon, which again is right here in Nokron. So maybe Silvertear shenanigans could happen. Maybe that storyline comes back. But there you have it, a new episode of things you might not know in Elden Ring. Once again, a huge thank you to you guys in the comments for all the great suggestions, and especially, like I've said, the back and forth on certain topics like the Basilisk topic today. I find it really interesting. If you have any suggestions, big or small, interesting details you think most people don't know, then let me know in the comments. It might be featured in the series. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.